before we met. I used to work with a company called Interface, run by a man called Ray Anderson. Interface make carpet tiles, how tedious. And Ray grew tired of taking plastic and turning it into weave and putting it onto the floors of the world's offices and then replacing them when the colors went out of fashion. And he went for a walk, and Jon can tell this story better than me. He went for the walk through the woods in fall in America. It's an American company. I'll use the word fall. And he looked at the floor and he went, this is a pattern that it doesn't matter if I kick a patch of leaves over there and put it over there. It's still natural. So Ray went back. He embraced this whole issue of biomimicry. He changed the company to be a sustainable company. He sadly died 10 or so years later. And roll on, I met Jon at Interface. And Interface's biggest loss is Jon. He's amazing. And I absolutely adore this man. He's been working for decades in sustainability and responsible business. And I use music in all of my workshops. And when I first met Jon, it was in a workshop. And this guy stood up with passion and insight. And he started rapping, stop, collaborate, and listen. Now, I'm not going to support the particular artist in that case.
I cannot believe you said that. We've got speech to bell here.
Oh, I love speech to bell. However, Vanilla Ice, not my bag.
Karaoke pastiche.
But I absolutely loved him, and we just gelled. And he is chair of trustees for the UK environmental charity Surfers Against Sewage. Day to day, he's the environmental policy lead at the LEGO Group. He focuses on the UN Plastics Treaty, climate policy strategy, and the circular economy. I genuinely, good runs through him like the word Blackpool through a stick of rock, and I'm really proud to hand over to you. Jon.
I like this because Mark didn't give me a brief. So it's been pretty open. And I was also happy to scratch my talk because I imagine there's about 50 questions coming your way. And thank you for sharing your story. I think I'm going to need to decompress this afternoon for a couple of hours. Now, you talked about Ray Anderson. And he was, do you know what I liked about Ray? He was a very successful businessman. He commercialized the use of carpet tiles. He had an environmental epiphany. But he was also someone that realized he was the problem. He was a problem because he was a manufacturer making loads of stuff out of plastic. And the other thing I kind of liked about him was he realized it wasn't him that was necessarily going to save it. In some ways, he kind of had to get out of the way and empower other people to have that voice. And I know for time-wise, do let me know when you've got to take me out on stage, but one of the things I've been thinking about, listening to the talks today and in general, is I'm very privileged to be a trustee of a very wonderful charity. I cannot take any praise for that charity because the work is done by people like Tabby and Giles that have been here in the last couple of days. I just try and keep us on the straight and narrow, solvent, and sticking by our heart and soul. But one of the things I've realised is when I look at other boards, and even look at our own, and I look at the diversity between them, whether it's on race or gender or on sexuality, it's not good. Like there was a report by the Race Report. They asked 125 charities, look at your staff, tell us about your, and this is just one category, racial diversity. And it was about 6%, whereas if you actually took people between the ages of 18 and 66, it should have been near like 15, 20%. Weirdly, board was a little bit higher, it was 9, but regardless of that, it's not enough. And one of the things I think about is my own privilege of being a trustee, because when I was young, I never really thought, I didn't know what a trustee was. I worked as a lawyer and I didn't really know what a trustee was. It was only until Hugo Tagholm, also here for the last couple of days, shout out for Oceana, and for Hugo, said to me, you've been helping us for a couple of years on plastics and whether plastics is a big thing and how we can empower communities. Would you like to interview to be a trustee? And I remember saying to him at a pub not so far from here, I didn't think I could be a trustee. I haven't had the experience. I'm not in my 50s. Sorry, Mark. because I didn't feel like the opportunity. And it just makes me think. Now I look at other boards, and when you go to like the Association of Chairs, or you go to other meetings, it's getting better, but we are nowhere near where we need to be. And if even when we go to events, I look around at the audience and I'm like, we've got work to do. And this is not a challenge on Will or any of the guys. They do. If anyone, this is one of the better ones, right? But there's so much to do. And we're going back to Ray. One of the things I think now that I'm in this kind of privileged position is I have to ask myself the question, when's the time to move aside? Or am I doing the best I can for the charity? And I have to ask my other 10 trustees the same thing. And that's quite hard. I think it was funny listening earlier to the talk and going, someone said, diversity is difficult. We've got some videos. Go and shelve your videos. Tell me what you're going to look into yourself, get uncomfortable, get vulnerable, and ask yourself, are you the right people to be around the table? And we've got to do much more to change this. And part of that is some process stuff. It's kind of making sure that you have terms that people stick to, whether as a chair or as a trustee, that you ask yourself, are you actually helping the charity do what it needs to do? One of the things I also worry about, and apologies now, I'm not on my rant roll, is tokenism within, we'll have a youth advisory board, or we'll bring a youth trustee in. But if that person's not given the training, the mentoring, and the support, I've watched it happen. People come out after the term of 3 years, and they had a bad experience, and they don't feel that they can give back. And we have work to do across the environmental sector, across the social sector, and wider to change that. And yeah, I'm happy to have a discussion with anyone, because I'm still learning how this could look. We as an organisation of Service Against Sewage are also doing the same. But one of the things I've learned from the Lega group, and I'm a mat cover there, and I can have a whole other discussion about what it means to be a responsible maternity or paternity cover, but we'll save that. One of the things I do like that the Lega group do is give visual representation. Like, you can get the minifigures, like the little characters. Now you'll see like sets where people have maybe got a prosthetic leg, or they're running on blades, or they're in a wheelchair, or there's a new film, and I feel bad when I do this because it's like I'm just advertising for the brand, but it's actually going to be a really good film. It's Pharrell Williams' biopic, and it comes out next month in the UK, and they had to think about different skin tones, because even for the film they could use 6, but funnily enough, 6 different skin tones doesn't quite represent the world, and that was an interesting discussion. But other things such as just having like a cleft, or having little minifigures with a cochlear implant. It looks like we're following Strictly, or Strictly's following us, I'm not sure which. But because if you're not seen, you don't feel accepted. And it's a silly little way to do it in little minifigures, but we have to think about how we replicate that in the real world as well. So I guess my bugbear at the moment is trustee diversity and leadership diversity, and how we enable it. My final rant, before I might open up to questions, is entitlement. When I became the chair of trustees, a good friend of mine, who I thought would have known better, said to me the following. He goes, "That's so exciting. It sets you up for the next one." And I said, "What the absolute fuck?" I'm not thinking, why am I a trustee of Service Against Sewage? I'm a trustee because I want to help. I've got, I think I've got some skills that could kind of help. I'm not on some kind of path where I'm like, I want to go here or there. When this ends, this comes to a natural close. And I think that kind of entitlement is so dangerous, but it's also quite insipid, because it feels, sometimes we feed that in terms of how we educate people. And we want people to be ambitious. But it worries me, because then that's the kind of thing that stops people moving on. Or if they're moving on, are they really moving on for the right reasons? Why do I love helping Service Against Sewage? I love helping Service Against Sewage because it gives communities a voice. In the last election, in the issue of water quality, we were able to make it alongside other organisations like River Action, Friends of the Earth, and so, an election issue. On the 3rd of November, there was a march for water in Westminster, where we'll see thousands of people empowered to come up from their communities and highlight this issue to a government that are still not doing enough. We voted you in, now sort it out. But equally, at water company meetings, empowering people to give the questions that make the water companies, any in the room today? They don't tend to come to my talks. Squirm a little, and allow us to be a critical frame. But that's another part, which is what's important to me is that if you're in a community and you want to have a voice on water, we try and design it so you have to be listened to in terms of the questions that you ask. Because there's a whole load of people that will be like, oh, it's the campaigners and the activists, they're just making noise. We're not trying to just make noise, we're trying to drive change. We're trying to make a better world, so for that next generation and the generation after that. And be good, to the earlier talk from Speech and Alexis, kind of custodians and guardians looking after the land by giving people the opportunity to have a connection to it. And so those are things that are going in my mind. And whatever's going, I see it from the world of charities, environmental stewardship, but as you listen to this, it must probably fit in, and you may have examples yourselves of what you're seeing and what you're trying to challenge. And this, Blue Earth is full of people that are very aware, or I hope so, and willing to ask themselves and ask organisations some more difficult questions. But I don't have any more. I mean, Mark, have you got any kind of questions, or do you want to open up? Tell me no one silenced Mark Shayler.
So, yeah, that's not fair. How about that one? Oh, fuck it. I got double. I'm talking in stereo.
He is
coming at you.
Risking things. Next, he's going to walk to the speaker.
I'm gonna open it back up for questions to yourself in a minute as well. But I'm really interested, John. I mean, your background's really interesting. You're a lawyer. You then worked in sustainability. You're a power lifter.
Weightlifter.
Weightlifter.
If you say that again, I'm going to get Emily Campbell to drive down from Alfreton and to show you the difference between powerlifting and weightlifting.
I'm actually mildly scared.
No, Emily's amazing.
Slightly aroused. Alfreton's near me. How do we change? Like company, the word company comes from the French. Pain meaning bread. It's about breaking bread together. The problem when we break bread in a modern world is the bread gets broken and given to shareholder. How do we remove the primacy of shareholder value and change business into something that is more equitable?
Two angles on that. One, it's been really interesting for me for the last 6 months to work for a company that's family owned, that 25% is owned by the foundation and 75% is owned by the family, because it's the same actually with Iceland and Richard Walker, who's a former chair of Service Against Sewage, who I learned a lot from. That kind of family ownership thing changes. We do have an issue in terms of corporate ownership, and when I was at Interface, one of the challenges was kind of you're tied to shareholder dividends, you're tied to growth, you're trying to run a sustainability narrative, and they do a very good job of it, but it is a tension. If we go back to water, I'm like, you could run things more like a social enterprise, where if something's like a utility, I don't really understand why, and maybe I don't have the economic smarts, but why that someone should profiteer off that, why something shouldn't be reinvested back into making the service better, back into communities. Like often the utilities companies will talk about how they're doing some great work around making it people easier to pay their bills or giving them a break for a few months. What if some of that profit actually went to help that? I mean, there is an example. Welsh Water, Dow Cymru is actually set up as a social enterprise, but it doesn't quite deliver.
They're an interesting example because they're public owned, and their communication on their bills is really interesting. Because the only time you get a relationship with the water company is when you get a bill from them, or you see them in the papers,
or you refuse to pay. Oh, we'll just say that.
And Welsh Water tried to change that, but they've actually made a bit of a mess of things themselves, right? There are lessons there, I think.
But then just that premise, and maybe that's something. One of the hard things is here, like at Blue Earth, others will talk about changing systems, but we need to see those examples, and we need to support the examples to grow to a stage where bigger companies can go, actually, I'll give that a go. I mean, Patagonia is the one that everyone will turn to because of, the way they changed their ownership. They're kind of owned by nature now in terms of how they're going to support. But then I've not seen many others follow the same way. And it is a really tricky one because it's so ingrained in everything we teach people, like through their MBAs and their business courses. When people come into business, they get fitted into a system. So it's a bit like the trustee diversity stuff, that until people are willing to challenge themselves and go, have we actually got this wrong? And not just put that into words, videos, but actually turn it into some difficult decisions and discussions. That's the impasse. And what worries me now is people when things are tough, people reinforce their old ways.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting as things change, as women rise, as people of colour rise, as sustainability rises, the old guard will fight, and there's nothing more dangerous than a dying lion, and that's what we're seeing now. And our job is to keep rising, no matter what bit of that we're on, right? I can't talk about diversity in terms of ethnicity. Clearly, I'm white, 56-year-old granddad, but I can talk about the other stuff.
You can talk, but the main thing with you is that you listen, and you're willing. Like, the problem is, I don't think it's necessarily an age thing. It's more how people are willing to listen and change their ways. Because I'd also say there's younger people. God, now that's officially, I'm now old. I've just used the phrase younger people, who actually have reinforced certain values again. So I'm always careful saying, like, if I take Service Against Sewage community membership, we've got some of the most open-minded people across different age brackets, but then we've also got a load of people who in each might think, like, within their age categories, think in a way that's a little bit different. And it's kind of, I don't want to tar people with a brush. It's more what they actually do and what they say and how they act that matters. And the ability to listen, whether you're in a place of privilege or not, is a really important, to listen and to empathise, which is, I say, more than listening, but to feel and try to understand. So don't feel bad about that.
Thank you. Feel all right now. I know we're overrunning. I know that. I'm looking at Rosie. I'm going to steal 10 more minutes because I'm going to get Gail back up, and we're going to have an open mic. If that's okay. Are you comfortable with that? And are you comfortable? No, you're not going to go anywhere. You're going to stay there. You're part of this.
He's got to go in the middle there.
I'm going to move. And we need to have a conversation about early access to minifigs from the film that you've just spoken about, because I'm super excited.
The thing is, there's for consumption reasons, it is not an advert that you must buy this set. However, Pharrell has a set that is it's like a rocket ship that launches off a rainbow, but also included is like 50 minifigure faces, all of different kind of looks and representing different things. And I love that he and others within our company pushed for that, because again, if you don't see it, you don't feel seen.
If you can't see it, you can't be it. It's really important to model this stuff. And I want a Sugar Hill Gang version of minifigs, please. Thank you. Right, questions. So we're going to open up. I think you got a microphone, Rosie? Yeah. We're going to go with speech to Belle first here.
Thank you. When you were talking, like, everyone, we know, innit? Incredible story, and like something that what was the theme of, like, surviving, like you kept surviving, and I don't know if you have, like, all of us in our lives have moments of we need to survive in different ways, right? Do you have advice on how to survive?
That's a hard question. Because I didn't even know how I survived. But after I survived, I found one thing, that no matter what happened in your life, a lot of things may happen, bad, good, and worse. You may think that this is the worst thing to ever happen to you or to ever happen to any human being. But know that if you're still alive, you're alive to live another day tomorrow. And never let anything that happened to you pull you back to finish you. rises always and shine and keep going. Anything that happened, it happened, and that's it. Put it aside, start your new chapter, and that's life. That's how I survived. I was never emotional in any difficulty that I was in. I would cry now, and later on, I would want to survive. Because if I don't have that mentality, I'm done. I wouldn't make it, believe me. I wouldn't make it. So to make it in life is having that thing in your heart that it happened, and that's it. I'm going to make it better. I'm going to make it better. And the reason why I survived is to tell this story. Yes.
I love that. I'm going to add a bit. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to add a little bit on there. How do you survive? It's beautiful. How do you learn to trust again after you've been so badly hurt?
Yeah, that's really a hard question. Trust is not something that someone made you fall into or made you do. It is the ability to believe that you can trust someone no matter what they do, but then at the end of the day, you will have the ability to handle whatever happens after it. Don't stop trusting people because of one person that broke your trust. Trust someone, but know that you can handle whatever comes with it and be able to heal in whatever they have put you in. I didn't know that as a child. And the second person who helped me, I didn't even know that he sold me deliberately. But I later found out when he never come back after he told me that I'll come back in 3 days and free you. And he never got bitten. And he never got taken out twice. He was taken out once and he left. So that's how I knew that this person deliberately brought me here to sell me to these people. So I met friends after I went out. I trusted people. My trust was broken, and I kept trusting again. I have a lot of friends, and I'm happy because I know someone can break your trust, and it doesn't mean that it's the end of good people out there. So it means that if someone breaks your trust, and tomorrow a good person come or a better person who means good for you, you would, be skeptical, and that's not okay. So just trust, but know that let your trust not put you into a point where it can completely destroy you. Know that, trust and handle it. Yeah.
That's wonderful. And we're talking about a different scale, but I'm going to ask the same questions of you, Jon. In the fight that we're on, we're like pirates inside big organizations, letting little explosive devices off to wake them up about the forthcoming climate challenge. How do you survive, particularly when, for some reason, head count seems to be focused on sales, not good? And how do you learn to trust again when you're working within big businesses?
I think for me, it's always about having a balance. Having a foot in both the charity and NGO world and the corporate world is a beautiful thing, because it means when I'm annoyed at one, I can kind of think about the other. But it's a troubling thing, because I can never really be happy, because I'm always going to be annoyed at one of the sides either not doing enough or not being heard enough, right? But I choose that. That's where I live, in between the two. But without having the two, I don't think I'd have that balance. And so that's how I survive, by trying to keep that balance. And also, this industry, or the third sector, it's so easy to be so passionate that you drive yourself to exhaustion, that you drive yourself to not feeling in a good way. And again, this comes, when we compare like stories, I've been very lucky in in comparison. But during those boundaries, like, I love the work that I do, but I also need to live a life, and occasionally I need to live something. That is like, and keeping that kind of, those boundaries is very important, because that's how you can keep being able to give. But the hardest thing, it means you can't do everything you want to do, which is tough.
No, I hear that. I had a conversation yesterday, a really inspiring one actually, about being able to retreat into the liminal space between those two things in order to recharge for both of them. Any more questions in the yeah, we've got one here and then one here at the back.
Thank you so much for both of you. My question is about hope. How can you be hopeful seeing the things that are happening today, probably giving you memories of what happened? Yeah, how do you keep on? Like, where's the hope coming from?
I can go first because I think the second one's going to be a more powerful answer. On my side, it's like what gives me hope is the communities that Surfers Against Sewage work on one side. So you know, someone like Sky Neville, one of our reps in Wales, she campaigned, so at the age of 8, she was campaigning against retailers and companies for those magazines that are covered in plastic with a crappy plastic toy, to stop them using that plastic and think better. But also, kind of, we've got people like Steve up in Yorkshire. He's been fighting the fight against Yorkshire Water since the 90s. And what gives me hope is the energy I get from them. On the Lego Group side, it's interesting. It's seeing, like, kids engage with climate change, or just kids' creativity and energy and ability to see the world in a fresh way. I'm inspired by them, but I'm also inspired to do the best I can to make sure the world's going to be better for them. So that's what kind of gives me hope.
I have a little story to tell to answer that. I think hope is brought to life by believing that something better is going to happen tomorrow. And that is that belief that when I was in jail kept me upright and never put me into a position where I could fall sick or I could, lose everything, that, this is the end of it. I always hope that I'll see the sun tomorrow again. That is the hope. I'll see the sun tomorrow. If not tomorrow, I'll eventually see it. So hope is having that thing in your heart that always keep you to wake up, brush your teeth, take shower, eat well, and then just go out there. That is the hope. Yeah, living another day, every day, that something better is going to happen tomorrow.
That's brilliant, thank you. We had one last question here, and unless there's another urgent one in the middle here, please.
Thank you for telling your stories, and thank you for being here and sharing. But if you had the ability to share your story with anybody in the world for the greatest impact, who would that be and why?
Yeah, that's a hard question. I've already made 2 classes in my mind already, but I don't know which to say. Well, the first people would be all the leaders in the world if they were to lock in one room. And then I would tell them this story. And they would be there for like 1 week, being fed only with white pasta with only salt and water, so that they can feel the same situation that some people or other people are going through. And then when they comes out, they will tell us about the situation. Is it good or bad? And then depending on what they say, and then we go with it. Second person would be maybe, many of you here don't believe in God, but I would say the second person would be God. I would ask him, why? Why did you come for me? Did you send me your lazy angel or what? Yeah, so that would be the second person, because the world, any child in the world deserves to live in peace, to, have at least stability in their life, not being displaced, not, going to bed hungry or worrying that he or she will not wake up the other day to see the sun or be free. Why is that? And that would be the simple question. Because the world is like enough for all of us to live, just live, as it has always been. Yeah, but, amongst you, there are a lot of change makers. And you change makers are the hope for tomorrow. And we cannot stop fighting. And let's fight until we stop breathing. And that should be how it is. If we wake up every day, know that you wake up to fight and fight and fight and fight until you can't fight anymore. Even in your deathbed, fight. And that's the goal. Thank you.
That's brilliant. I'm going to ask the same question to you. It's a great question. Thank you. If you were to be able to tell your story to anybody, who would that be?
To be honest, my approach is a pyramid scheme. My
Multi-level marketing.
you know more than I just looked up in the dictionary. But my point is, my story itself, in a different way to yours, but I can say mine actually doesn't matter. What matters is that I can go and tell everyone I meet to think about how they can help, to think about being a trustee, to think about sitting on an advisory board, that there is a seat that they should have at the table, whatever background they come from. And if I can leave them thinking when they walk away from a discussion with me, why not? Then I've done the story I need to do. And then if you guys, because you've now heard my story, do the same to people you meet and you nudge them in that direction of going, you've got something to say, this is a cool organisation, this is a cool organisation, why don't you see what the opportunities might be there, then it'll work. And in the background, I'll try and knock down some walls and barriers to them getting those opportunities. But that's the best thing I can do with my story. I am fundamentally an unremarkable person, as that alarm is telling me. But what I can do is, if I can have a say and have a voice, and if I can get others to think they can too, that's the best I can do. But no one come after me for some kind of pyramid scheme. There's no cash. The only value is social value, right?
Thank you. And I know you're an Olympic lifter. We're done for this morning. And we talked a lot about the sun. To wake up and to see another sun. Beautiful. And light is both purifying as well as illuminating. And it's really easy to think that it's dark. It's a dark time. But every one of us, like we're at a Neil Diamond concert, has like got a little lighter, or Harry Styles, I don't care, a little lighter. And we got our little light going, and it's tiny. It's tiny. But like when you leave your first year halls at uni, and you got to take your posters down, and you think, shit, the blue tack. And you think, I've got to get, it's everywhere. And you get a little bit of blue tack, and you touch it on the next bit, and then the next bit, and it's little bits of blue tack, and then you've finished, and you've got a ball of blue tack. And then you think, what am I going to do with this? I'll do it again next year. Every single one of our lights, if we're to pull it all together, will form this fierce ball. And that's what gives us hope. We've got to see the light in people. And at a time where it's never been easier to fall out with each other in the same sector with the same aim, I call it friendly fire, we've got to put that beside us, put that out of the way, and see the things that join us. And that's what I think Reasons to be Cheerful does. And that's what brought me, and Rosie also was a big part of this, in linking Reasons to be Cheerful to Blue Earth. Strange, odd bedfellows at first instance. No. Absolutely unified with one trajectory, one direction, but with different audiences. So thank you for trusting us. I think we're going to be back next year. Thank you for trusting us. Thank you for fucking surviving, genuinely. We've got an event in our garden in Leicestershire on the 30th of November. It's going to be like 20 quid or something. And there's going to be music and there's going to be amazing talks. If you're interested, please come. Blue Earth Summit do a series of forum events, which they'll be rolling out as the year unfolds. Please get involved in that. Please get involved in any of the speakers, what the things that they're doing, Incredible Edible or Edible Bristol, Blackfish, the work that Jon does, Asylum speakers, anything, please get in touch. We're going to share links to all of this on our Instagram, which is @manyreasons-to-be-cheerful. All the talks have been filmed, thank you, Josh, and they will be on there as well over the next weeks. Have an amazing weekend and do what you do best.
As well.